get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great. 9, gonna shine, life is good. I'm doing fine. 10, go.
Hello, Beyond Your Wildest Dreams tribe. I'm Dr. Noah DeCoyer, your co-host, and on behalf of my partners, Dr. Michael Akinfora and Dr. Wanda Lee McPhee, we want to thank you all for subscribing. As we surge to 100,000 subscribers, we would like to show you our appreciation with 3 free gifts. In our show notes on iTunes and Podomatic, there are 3 separate links to each of our most latest ebooks: Fermentation 101, Paleo Crockpot Style, and Whole Foods Harvest. Thank you again, and before you begin listening to this incredible podcast, don't forget to register for our upcoming summit, the Longevity and Anti-Aging Project, Living Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise, at www.antiagingproject.com. Hello and welcome back to Beyond Your Wildest Dreams podcast. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer and I am your co-host. Today our guest is Joe Cavanaugh. Joe is president of Equip to Equip, a company dedicated to equipping leaders to equip others. He is author of The Language of Blessings and is a frequent speaker at conferences, executive retreats, and universities. Joe was first trained as a strength coach in 2002 and has since coached over 3,000 individuals. In 2004, Joe completed a degree in strength-based management. In 2005, Joe was recruited to be the lead partner of the Gallup Global Faith Division and served there for 4 years. In the summer of 2009, Joe founded Equip to Equip. He and his wife, Janie, live in Omaha, Nebraska and have 5 sons and 4 grandchildren. Joe, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful.
Great. Well, first question, as always, is tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you became who you are today.
Okay. I was from actually a pretty dysfunctional family. We're all Irish, and Irish do have some issues, especially with the drink. So my family was no exception. I actually multiple generations of issues. And as a result of that, our home was a very difficult home to live in, having an alcoholic parent who was also bipolar. And that caused me at a very young age to want to understand what would explain his behavior. And why was he treating us like he was treating us? And so it really got me interested in the whole subject of psychology and why do people do what they do and that type of thing. And I knew that I had picked up some issues, having been in that environment. And so I began to press more into why do I do the things I do? And so that was really the catalyst that began my journey, and it has been an incredible journey ever since. And the opportunities for learning and having deeper understanding, of course, are so broad today, and we're learning so much about being human and at that very core of what motivates us, how are we unique, how do we differ from one another, how do we relate with one another, all those wonderful topics.
So then tell us a little about Equip to Equip.
We are a coaching and consulting firm, and we are focused on optimizing leadership in organizations, because the reality of it is nothing happens without great leadership. Nothing good happens, at least. And so we're focused primarily on leadership, but we actually just recently we launched a wonderful program for young people who are considering going into college, but really have no idea really what they want to pursue. And so we actually now are working with families and youth, helping them to accurately assess and choose a course of study that's going to really complement who they are, what they're truly passionate about. So we're working with a very broad range of people. I focus primarily on leadership, corporate leadership, professionals such as yourself, working with their teams. That would be my primary focus. But we have 5 partners, and each has their own particular emphasis. Another partner is actually focusing primarily in the faith world, and he works very closely with faith-based organizations globally. He has been all over the world and continues to travel all over the world. So we're quite broad in how we approach, but our focus is always on the development of leadership, whether that be in an organization or leadership in a family.
I think that's great how broad you guys are. It's really, really important. Now, I have an interesting question for you, and I'm interested in how you're going to answer it. Are we really that unique from one another and each of us in our own way?
Yeah, that's kind of the $64,000 question as far as what we do. The answer to that is we are unique beyond human comprehension. The degree of our uniqueness is really mind-boggling. And the reality is most people are not aware of this, hardly at all. We hear, I even tell a story in a book I wrote called The Language of Blessing, that when I was in first grade, I remember, we were cutting out the little snowflakes, and the teacher said, look at every one of these snowflakes, how that unique they are from one another. And they were certainly different from one another. And she said, you're just like that. You are each absolutely unique. My initial response was, well, how cool is that? That's exciting. But the more I began to ponder it, the more I began to wonder, so if that's true, why is she treating me like everyone else? Why is she telling me that I have to learn the way she thinks I should learn without even understanding what my best approach to learning is? My issue is that I'm one of those people, I'm a kinetic learner and I'm a verbal learner. And what I was being told in first grade there was a good student sits quiet, does not fidget, does not speak unless spoken to, and it felt so incredibly repressive to the point that I did not enjoy school at all. And that's one example where the education system today, on one hand, will say we're unique, but on the other hand, the way they actually treat the students is all basically the same. So that's one example. But to give you an idea to really answer your question directly, we use several assessments that are highly empirically researched and highly validated, highly reliable. One of them is Strength Finders. And Strength Finders are becoming kind of a global phenomenon now, where people are beginning to take it in virtually every country in the world. Well, with Strength Finders, we look at it, and there are 34 individual themes of strengths that we can each have in a particular order. And when we look at that, the amazing thing is a lot of people, they'll take the assessment and they get their top 5 strengths. And they look at that and they say, well, there's really nothing all that terribly special about that. Except when you begin to look at those top 5 strengths, what they don't realize is your top 5 strengths, on average, occurs once in 33.4 million people. and I mean, people look at me and go, that can't be. And I said, well, you want me to walk you through the math, which I'm happy to do. And they'll look at that and they'll go, that's amazing. I said, well, think about this. That's your top 5. You have far more than 5 strengths. Let's look at your top 10. So we're looking at their top 10. I said, do you understand that this top 10 in this order occurs once, and I'm going to round up here a little bit, occurs once in 447 trillion. And a trillion is 1,000 billion. And they look at they begin thinking about that. And I said, let's take it one step further, just to really blow your mind. This full 34 report you possess, if you look at the full report, that your report in your order now, that will occur once in 295 followed by 36 zeros. Just to try to put a number to that. If you were to count every single grain of sand on planet Earth, on every beach, in every lake and river, and in every ocean, and you counted every single grain of sand on planet Earth, you still wouldn't get that number.
So the short answer is, I guess, yes, we are really all that unique.
Yes, we are. And we begin to add other variables, how you're uniquely motivated, what your unique experiences have been, what your unique intelligence. When you begin to do this, it's so amazing. And one of the reasons I think that people have a hard time with that is that they kind of confuse the fact that we all have universal needs. That's true. We do have universal needs. We have a need for safety and shelter and clean water and quality food. And we all have the universal need to belong, to be part of something. We all have the universal need to do something of meaningful accomplishment. Those are universal needs. We share that in common. However, the way we do all of that is utterly unique to every individual.
It's a beautiful thing. Now, I've taken this test. My wife's taken the test. Many of my colleagues have taken the test, and we've sat through coaching and presentations with you, and it is an amazing thing to just simply take the test, and then it's an amazing thing to actually get your strength. So I highly recommend anybody who's listening today on the call to go to this Clifton Strength Finders. I think it's only $89. It is an incredible $89 well spent for sure.
It is, yeah. And that actual site is the GallupStrengthsCenter.com. I don't get a penny from it. I just want people to become more self-aware. I will say this, that it is very important that if they're going to look at that, it can be very, very confusing without someone who's been trained to walk you through the results. My experience has been is that people simply pull that and they look at it and they don't receive any coaching with it. Within a matter of a few months, they've completely forgotten it and it's had no impact on them. And where, as you've said, Dr. Noah, that you've taken it, you're receiving coaching in it, and it just becomes alive then. And you begin to see in all the different ways that you apply those strengths and experience those strengths, and even with your spouse.
Yes, whether you do it individually, whether you do it in a large group and see how it integrates with a large group or your company or your spouse, it's a fascinating thing to really break down your strengths, break down how your strengths work with other people in your organization or your group or your colleagues or your accountability groups or your spouse. It's an amazing it's just an amazing thing, and I know that's what you do, Joe, and we'll touch upon that definitely at the end.
Sure.
But that is a crucial point to bring up. I agree 100%. A minute ago, you brought up something about being aware. Is or can you speak about how important it is to be self-aware?
Yes. I still remember when I was working for the Gallup organization, my office was on the third floor of their university. They actually have a 4-year accredited university, and they actually partner with universities all over the world to create these programs. And I was talking to one of their PhDs there, and we were talking about this subject of self-awareness. And so we're dialoguing about that. He began to communicate to me that their research was showing that fewer than 1 out of 5 people globally can articulate even one area of strength that they possess, which I found astounding. Is how could that be? And they continue to show me the research and all the work that they've done on that. And what hit me all of a sudden was that the far, far majority of people really have no idea what they truly excel at. And the reality is everyone is incredibly gifted and talented. They just don't know it. And what happens as a result of that, if they don't know that they have these wonderful talents and strengths, then there's no intentionality in developing those strengths and applying those. And so they don't get the benefit of what they actually already have, but nor does anyone else, nor does their team, nor does their organization, nor does their community. And so the amazing thing from the Gallup organization and the work of Dr. Clifton is that originally the thought was world-class talent is really rare. What Dr. Clifton discovered after 30 years of research and interviewing over 2 million people is that the human population is absolutely flowing with an abundance of incredible strengths. They just don't know they have them.
I'd like to believe that I'm relatively self-aware. Not that I don't have a lot of work in developing those, but if you were to ask me prior to doing the Strength Finders test what I'm really great at, I could tell you what my strengths are, what some of my strengths are for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But why aren't people self-aware? Is there a reason for that?
There are multiple reasons for that, and one of the things about lack of self-awareness is that it's actually generational. When parents are not themselves self-aware, they tend to have children who are not very self-aware. And children, when they're young, actually do have pretty good self-awareness, but unself-aware parents unintentionally are projecting their own strength, talent, intelligences, thinking, again, we're all pretty much the same. And if I can do it, I know you can do it if you'll just try hard enough. Which that's a very, very damaging way of thinking, but we all think it. We've all said that to other people. Again, we go back to how incredibly unique we really are and how unique our sets of talents are. To be able to say to someone, if I can do it, you can do it, is actually bordering on delusional. But we do it. And we think we're doing it out of humility. I'm a pretty average Joe. I don't really see myself as that incredibly talented, which is true of most people. And so I project that then onto other people. And again, as a father of 5 sons, I did that to my sons. And I'll give you an example. I passionately love reading. I am voraciously curious. And matter of fact, when I was 15 years of age, my paternal grandmother gave me a set of World Book encyclopedias. And over the next year, I read that set of encyclopedias from A through Z. And which I thought, well, who wouldn't do that? I mean, if you have that access to that kind of incredible information, who would not do that? Well, much to my shock, about 99% of the population wouldn't do that. So I love that. Well, I projected that onto my boys, even saying things. And this was a terrible thing to say, but even saying, if you don't develop a passion and a love of reading, you're never going to really amount to anything significant. That was a terrible thing to say. But that's an example of me minimizing the uniqueness of my strengths and projecting those onto my sons. So parents do that. Well, then we go to school. And a little bit like I said earlier, I have a very distinctive style of learning. Well, that was not compatible with the way teachers wanted to function. And a true story, when I entered 3rd grade, the teachers had already colluded, and my 3rd grade teacher informed me that I asked too many questions, and therefore she was going to limit me to 1 question per class. And that was it. And my classmates were devastated because their whole thing was, we feel stupid when we ask questions, but it didn't seem to affect you. So we love the fact that you ask the questions we're all thinking. But they literally said, you ask too many questions. We consider that disruptive. And so, I just experienced one kind of shutdown after another that my style of learning was not acceptable. And I began to perceive that I must not be a very good student, and I guess I must not be very smart. And so that's an example. The way the school is set up, about 25% of the students will excel with that style of learning. Half will do okay, and another quarter will actually really struggle and suffer because it's so incompatible with their style of learning. So that's an example. Then, we get a job, and our boss tells us, look, I've been doing this for decades. I know the way to do this, and the way to do this is exactly the way that works for me. That's the right way to do it. And if you deviate from the way I do it, you're doing it wrong. And how's that working for everybody? So it's that's one issue. The other issue is what we saw when I was at Gallup, what I saw in the corporate world is in the corporate world, they hire you for your talents and your experience. But then when you get that first annual review, and this has actually been documented, out of an hour annual review, maybe 10 minutes may be focused on your strengths and where you excelled. And the other 50 minutes will be focused on your weaknesses. And so the reality is we really do have a weakness-focused world. And whether it's the education system, whether it's the work system, where they focus on the very things you're not, rather than enhancing and growing your greatest areas of talent and strength.
Joe, I'm a person who's a relatively voracious reader like you, and I like to learn about a lot of different subjects. But in the same token, I have spent the last few years just really working more diligently on my strengths. I don't put a lot of effort into what I'm quote unquote weak on anymore. And a lot of it has to do with what I've heard from you in the past. And I thank you for that.
Congratulations.
Yes, right.
Fantastic.
You may have touched upon a few things already about how about becoming more self-aware, but what are some of your suggestions on becoming more self-aware?
That is so important to begin to focus on that. And what I find is I am personally, because I do research so much, one of my standards is I only want my clients to be exposed to assessments. I don't refer to them as tests because it's really, you can't pass or fail. These are assessments which assess your unique qualities, whether those be talents, whether those be motivations, whether that be character, this type of thing. So I really spent a lifetime identifying assessments that help people discover who they are authentically. Not what other people want them to be, not what other people have projected on them to be, but who they are authentically, what literally is in their DNA, what is in their neural patterns already. And when we discover that, that's what we want to now really fully draw out. We want to focus on that. We want to develop that. We want to give greater application to that. Because the reality of it is that where a person is going to excel is by focusing on what they do best. Now, this is a really important concept here. We do not ignore a person's weaknesses. That's a misnomer, and I'm reading articles in Harvard's Business Review and all these different things. It's really popular right now to bash the whole strengths movement because somehow they're implying we ignore weaknesses. We absolutely do not ignore weaknesses. And I'll give you an example. As you know already, as we've been talking about this, I'm voraciously curious. I also have talents like ideation, so people consider me very creative. I'm strong in communication. I'm a published author. I do a lot of public speaking. I love all that. But let's talk about one of my weaknesses. So having taken Strength Finders, and I know that when I look at the bottom of that full 34, and those are called non-patterns, I actually lack the neural pattern for particular strengths. One of the strengths I lack is discipline. Now, people who are strong in discipline, they love structure, they love routine, they love predictability. Now, as I hear things like that, for me to function, where if I'm doing repetitive, routine type of things, that actually creates deep emotional pain for me. I can't function like that. I don't even want to drive home the same way. I literally go out of my way just because I can look at, oh, I didn't know they were building a building over there, or, this road's under construction, well, whatever it may be. I don't like routine. It's really difficult for me. And I understand there's certain things, we've got to embrace from that standpoint, but I also understand that in order for my practice to thrive, I have to have people who are really gifted with discipline. And so I will form complementary partnerships with them. Other things I will do is I'll use technology to help me. So I use my smartphone. So every coaching session I have with a client, my smartphone gives me a 15-minute warning to say that it's coming up. I should get ready for that, which I do. And then as I'm in that process with them, another alarm will go off at 15 minutes before the time we're supposed to close. And that lets me know it's time to begin to wrap things up. So by forming complementary partnerships with people who are gifted in discipline, by using technology to help me with being more disciplined, that's how I can work with that. But it's definitely, how do we maximize our strengths? How do we manage our weaknesses? That's the magic combination.
Yeah, I could use an example from my wife and I forget which strength it is, but her number 2 strength is my number 34 strength or weakness, however you want to look at it. And it's interesting how we complement each other because of that, but it's also interesting how it can cause some strife if we don't understand how they work together.
That is such a great observation. And what you're alluding to is, the old adage, opposites attract,
Right.
is absolutely true, right?
Yes.
And you and Carrie are an example of that. And my wife and I are an example of that. And actually most people I know are examples of this. And the beauty of that is exactly as you say, if we are aware of those differences and we appreciate the fact that that's a strength for Carrie and that's a non-pattern view. You don't think like that. In the same way, I have great difficulty in thinking in a very regimented, disciplined way. I'm the creative. I'm out there. My wife just, has the same type of, we're complementary that way. She's very structured. She's very organized. And so that's the beauty of this. However, if we're not self-aware of that, then these become a source of strife and conflict. What a tragedy. What could be so complementary, what could make the couple so much stronger, so much more effective in what they do, actually turns into a source of anger and argument and conflict. And so that's one of the things that really reinforces we need to be both self-aware and we need to be other-aware. So, and the interesting thing about that is you cannot become other-aware until you first become self-aware.
Fantastic point. Now, one of the other things that we've talked about in the past is attribution error, which causes people to judge others more harshly than they judge themselves. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that a little bit further and maybe give an example or two?
Absolutely. It's really a fun concept to press into. But first of all, it has multiple applications. One is that, and we touched on a little bit earlier, but one of the attribution errors is, again, if we can do something, we think everyone can do something. We actually tend to see our own strengths as common to everyone. And so that's one example of attribution error, is that, for example, I gave with my reading, my passion for reading, an error I made even as an author was I thought, well, everyone loves reading, right? So this would be great. I'll have all these people read my book. Well, it was quite a jolt to find out that that is not the case. The majority of people do not read books. So that's one example. But another example of attribution error is where we'll take this example. Let's say you're out shopping and you observe a father with his son, and he is chiding his son for his behavior, and I mean publicly, and you're looking at him and you're going, I don't know that you'd say this, but you go, what a jerk. Why would you shouldn't be treating your son that way in public. Take it outside, or but don't, that's just inappropriate. You should not be doing that. But we could fast forward a couple weeks down the road, and you might be with your son, and your son has done something, whatever that may be, heaven forbid, but all of a sudden it just hits you wrong, and you respond fairly harshly. But when you think about that, you go, well, but I was completely justified in that. And any reasonable person would have done exactly what I did. Does that make sense? That
Absolutely.
We can justify our own behavior because we have all the details, all the information on that. But when we observe someone else, or another example would be, and I've got myself doing this, someone cuts me off in traffic. And I'm going, how people like that shouldn't even have a license. I mean, my goodness, that is so careless and so thoughtless and that type of thing. And yet, I've inadvertently done the same thing. But when I do it, it's like, well, the reason I was doing it was because, there was a car off to my left and that was distracting me, and I was watching him, and so it's very interesting in that we give ourselves a great deal of grace, but we tend to judge others very, very harshly. And this can extend to both our family and our children as well.
I do that myself. I try to catch myself, but I find myself doing that often. It's easy to justify things when you're doing it yourself, for sure. Now, Joe, you coach a lot of people. You've coached a ton of people, and you're coaching a lot of people now. Give our audience an idea of what kind of coaching you do, what does it entail, what are some of the first steps, how can people get in touch with you so they know where to find you.
Sure. Thank you for that opportunity to do that. We call our process a life plan process. And the way that works is, first of all, we want to help people understand how they are uniquely talented. And we want them to come into really a deep appreciation how incredibly valuable that unique set of talents they have are, and what are some of the possible applications for that as well, and how to further develop those. StrengthsFinders shows you how you're uniquely talented, but it does not indicate to you how you're motivated to use those talents. So we use another highly validated assessment, highly reliable, called MCORE. MCORE identifies your unique core motivations. Very, very exciting assessment to be able to use. And then what we do is we then show how to integrate, how to align the strengths with those motivations. So people really get a sense of what strengths do they use to exhibit this particular motivation. What strengths does this motivation then bring in order to be able to be expressed? We also then use another highly validated assessment called VIA, V-I-A. It stands for Values in Action. And this assessment shows us what we are naturally strong in when it comes to character traits. And I think it's very, very valuable for people to really understand where you're going to find it very easy to express character traits that are highly valued throughout the world, but it will also show you where you're going to struggle a little bit. And so again, when I look at my VIA, I'm going to struggle a little bit where it comes to that area of discipline. And so it's not only do I not like structure that type of thing, but sometimes self-restraint is going to be a little bit of an issue for me. I'm pretty high energy, outgoing, but it's good to know that. So VIA is that third kind of what we triangulate is how are you uniquely talented? How are you uniquely motivated? What is your unique profile for your character and your virtues?
Is MCORE is EMCORE? How do you, what's the website
Yes,
for that?
MCORE. And it's really important, again, that people do have a coach to work with them, and we actually provide the code for them. So I'm going to strongly recommend that people would contact me, and I would help them with that. I am both a master coach, and I actually train other coaches to use that instrument.
Beautiful. Now, how do they directly get in touch with you then, Joe?
Okay, so the best way to get in touch with me is my email address, and we've tried to make it real simple. It's Joe, Joe, at equip, and then the number 2, equip. So equip2equip.com. And of course, equip2equip.com would also be our website, which I enthusiastically invite people to come and visit that and look at that. And you can, at your own leisure, read through and find what all we offer and how we do that. And then once we've completed those 3, then what we then offer our clients is a full life plan. And a full life plan, number 1, will help them identify what is their unique purpose, what is their unique contribution that they alone can really offer the world. And that is so important for a person to be able to identify that. And then a life vision. If you were able to offer what you are uniquely capable of offering, how does the world change as a result of that? That's a life vision. And then very importantly, we then develop a set of strategies with specific start times and end times and specific steps of how you actually bring this to life and actually implement this in your life so that you can know the joy of what you are uniquely capable of contributing.
Sounds incredible. All I can say from my experience that you've been a tremendous help to my chiropractic group called the UAC. You've been a tremendous help to myself, to my wife. So I encourage our audience to reach out to you, check out your website, check out Strength Finders. I personally have not done VIA or MCORE yet, but I'm sure that's in my future.
Yes, it is.
I thank you so much, Joe. You're a fascinating person to know with an incredible purpose. It's really been a pleasure.
Well, it certainly has been my pleasure as well to get to know you and Carrie, and I really appreciate this opportunity that we can take some time and just share how powerful this really is.
Totally agree. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer, your co-host, and you are listening to the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please share this with your friends and family and encourage them to subscribe on iTunes. You can sign up for our incredible weekly email at www.centerforepigeneticexpression.com. And please let me encourage you to check out our first project/summit at www.painreliefproject.com. Lastly, and in a way very, very important, we need you guys, our audience, to give us reviews and feedback. They are very important to us. Please leave a review on iTunes and help us deliver the best possible product we can. Thank you, Joe. And as my oldest son Hayden says, be awesome and never unawesome.